radius. You guys should be able to start number one all by yourself without me. This is just finding the area of a circle. And so the area formula of any circle is pi times the radius squared. We're not going to use the diameter when we're finding area because that's just used for circumference. So for number one, Maddie Cheeseman, is this 14 millimeters, the radius or diameter? Perfect. It's the radius. That's what we want. So we're going to do pi times 14 squared. Now, if you don't know what 14 squared is, you should have a calculator in front of you. 14 times 14 or 14 squared is 196. Remember that squaring a number does not mean timesing by 2. 196 times 3.14 gives you what answer? Branson. Okay, 615.44. Again, we're using 3.14 for pi. You can use the pi button and get something slightly different. What did you get? 0.75, and that answer will be accepted as well. Except both of these answers have to be rounded to the nearest tenth. So yours would be 0.8. Branson, would this be closer to 615.4 or 615.5? 0.4. So we're just going to cut this extra 0 off. Now, the reason I'm able to cut this one off, extra 0, sorry, we're going to cut this extra 4 off. The reason I'm able to do that is because we've already checked that 4 is not big enough to bump the first 4 up to a 5. And my label for all area problems, square units. So this is millimeters squared. That's how you find the area of a circle. And again, using the pi button is perfectly fine. Now, the reason there was more of a difference between the 3.4 and the pi button, the bigger the number you times to pi, the bigger the difference there is between using 3.14 or the pi button. But both those answers are acceptable. All right, number 2. You should notice one main difference between numbers 1 and number 2. What difference do you see? Maddox? This one gives you the diameter. That's exactly right. We don't want the diameter. We still want the radius. So Maddox, if the diameter is 12, what would that make the radius? 6. Perfect. So we're going to do pi times 6 squared. These area formula and circumference formulas for circles are not difficult to use. What is 6 squared, Caden? 36. And do 36 times pi for me. 36 times pi. Did you use the pi button? Yeah. Okay. 0.09 if you use the pi button, 0.04 if you use 3.14. And then how do I label this? Somebody want to give me my label, Hunter? Feet squared. Yeah, feet squared. Good. Oh, actually, Caden, I want to double check this. You said 113.09. That would actually be 113.1 because the 7 is going to bump the 9. Okay, just make sure we're, yeah. So perfectly fine with using the pi button as long as we're rounding correctly. Frank, right now? Okay. Number 3. Number 3 says you want to find real tiny. So I'm going to read this to you. You want to find the distance that a person on top of a Ferris wheel is from the person on the bottom of the Ferris wheel. Which best describes that distance? So this is what we're looking at, a Ferris wheel, which is in the shape of a circle. There's a person on top of the Ferris wheel and a person on bottom, probably loading or unloading. And if I wanted to know the distance between them, what would I call that distance, Lucas? The diameter. Perfect. So you, for number 3, you can just write the word diameter. Now, what if it said you wanted to know how far you traveled if you made one trip around the Ferris wheel? How would that change your answer? Wouldn't be the diameter anymore. What would it be? Circumference. What if I said you wanted to know what one of the arms of the Ferris wheel were from the center to the outside of it, Addison? That'd be the radius. And I don't know why you'd want to know the space inside of the circle because it's not all there. You know what a Ferris wheel looks like. It's not all there, but that would be area if you want to know the space inside. All right, moving on to number 4. Number 4 is a semicircle. Now, when we did a semicircle yesterday on the first practice quiz, we were finding the perimeter of it. So we had to do half a circumference, and then we had to add this side on because we were doing number of sides. That's what perimeter is adding sides together. We are not going to do that today, because today it's all about finding the space inside. And so I'm just going to use half my area formula, and that's it. Don't add any sides on because I don't want sides. So half the area formula would just be pi r squared divide by 2, or I like to write it like this, but you same thing, divide by 2. Sierra, what would the radius of the semicircle be? 9, perfect. So if that diameter is 18, because it goes from one side to the other side, the radius is going to be 9. So we're going to do 1/2 times pi times 9 squared. 9 squared is what, Caden? 81. So there's a starting spot. You can start at 81 times pi, and then you have your choice. Divide by 2 or times by 0.5. What do you get as your answer? I've heard from you guys. I've heard from Lucas. Maddox, do you want to answer this one? 127.17. Again, we're using 3.14. You'll get something slightly different. And then label for me, if you use the pi button, label for me, Maddox. Inches squared. Okay. So a couple things. First, yeah, you have a question. Nearest hundredth, right? That's 2 decimal places. You're thinking nearest 10th. Yeah. Nearest hundredth is 2 decimal places. Okay. Couple things. I need eyes on me for this. This is really important because I don't want you to miss points on your quiz tomorrow. Some of my students are still struggling with this, so I want to make sure we understand this. When you want to take half of a number, you can multiply it by 0.5, or you can divide it by 2. What you can't do is divide it by 0.5. I'm seeing some people do that. When you divide a number by 0.5, you don't chop it in half, you actually double it, which is the opposite of what we're wanting to do. So multiply by 0.5. Don't divide by 0.5. You want to divide by something, divide by 2. Those aren't the same thing. Multiplying by 0.5 is not going to be the same answer as dividing by 0.5. So that's the first thing. Second thing, someone asked me last period, if you know that half of 9 is 4.5, can you just do 4.5 times pi squared? The answer is no. You have to square the 9 first. Why do we have to square the 9 first? Aiden? That's exactly right. There's an order to our operations. Parentheses, okay, I don't have any of those, usually don't. Exponents comes before multiplying and dividing. So I know you're thinking, well, isn't exponent just telling me to multiply? Yes, but it tells me I have to do that first. So 9 squared has to be done first. Then you can divide by 2 if you wanted to, and half of 81 is 40.5. You could do that if you wanted to, or you could wait to divide by 2 at the end. Also, you can't just do 1/2 times pi times 9 and then square it, because again, you're multiplying before you use the exponent. Exponent has to come first. First thing you should do is square your radius. Then you can times by pi, divide by 2. Okay, be clear on that? If you miss, so I know there's going to be people on tomorrow's quiz that show all the right work, and then because they typed it into their calculator wrong or did it in the wrong order, they're getting the wrong answer. So number 1, make sure you're showing your work. Number 2, exponents first. All right, number 5 is number 5 is not there. Number 6 is our next one. A Valentine's heart for us. Find the area of the figure, round your answer to nearest hundredth. So again, yesterday I would have asked you how many sides you see. I see 4 sides, by the way, but I'm not going to ask you that today because we're not doing perimeter. I'm going to ask you what shapes you see. What shapes do you see inside the heart? Maddie Intes?
I see 2 semicircles and a square.
Awesome. 2 semicircles and a square. Those right angles tell us this is a square, and we know the sides are the same. So let's do the area of the 2 semicircles first. Maddie, if there's 2 semicircles, that makes what? Yep, 1 full-size circle. So we're just going to do pi times radius squared, And Maddie, what would the radius of those semicircles be? 2. Yeah, that line, and I kind of covered it up here. That line is pointing to the line that goes from the center. The arrow is pointing to the line that goes from the center to the edge. So that is the radius. Good. And then we're going to square that. So Maddie, what's 2 squared, or 2 times itself, and 4 times pi? Awesome. So the area of both semicircles, 12.56. We're not going to divide by half. Sorry, we're never going to divide by half. We're not going to times by half. That's what I meant to say, because I've got 2 of these guys. It'd be pointless to divide by 2 and then turn around and double it. So just 12.56, we got 1 full circle. Now for the square. Before you jump to conclusions on the square, because we know we're just doing base times height, you should double check that you really know what the base of the square is. How long is this line from here up to there? 4. Yeah, it's actually the diameter of the semicircle, not 2, it's 4. So we've got 4 for all the sides of the square. What's 4 times 4? 16. Now that we have all the areas, we're going to add them together. And Hannah, what do we get when we add these areas together? Perfect. And label for me, Hannah. Good job. Okay. So on your quiz tomorrow, this problem here has multiple parts to it. Make sure you're showing your work. And I mean, I want to see everything. I want to see how you got the 16. I want to see that you write 4 times 4 down. I want to see how, especially how you got the 12.56. I want to see that you did pi times 2 squared. Show that work, because if you mess up somewhere, you can still get a lot of partial credit by showing the work if you got the rest of it right. You know, if I let's say I accidentally used 4 as the radius instead of 2, but I do everything else right, well, I'm going to get most of the points of that problem. That's just one mistake, but you have to show work. By the way, if you don't show work on a problem, I don't care if you have the right answer. I'm just going to mark it off and move on. I'm going to spend as much effort grading it as you did solving it. Got to show your work. Number 7 is our next problem. Number 7 is this shape. How many circles do you see in that shape? None. So I shouldn't use, bless you, I shouldn't use pi at all. Pi is only for when you see circles, semicircles. We even saw a quarter circle yesterday. Yeah, if I don't have any circles, I'm not going to use pi. So again, I'm going to ask you, what shapes do you see? Max. Okay, now you could split it into 3 triangles, and I think what you're referring to is this triangle here and then this one here. But that red line is actually just telling you how tall the triangle is. So you could just think of this as 1 triangle, a second triangle, and a rectangle. How many of you guys saw that? Triangle on top, triangle on the right, rectangle in the middle. So 3 shapes, 3 areas, add them together. I'm not going to do that. I didn't see 3 shapes. I saw 2. You know which shapes I saw? I saw a triangle on top, and I saw a trapezoid on the bottom. Now you might be thinking, oh, I don't want to use a trapezoid. Well, you don't have to, but I'm going to give you the formula tomorrow. So if you know how to use the formula, if you know what to plug into it, it's actually going to save you some time, because instead of doing one part and another part and doubling your work, I'm going to use one formula that gives me everything for the trapezoid. So we'll do the triangle first, and then I'll do that trapezoid. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So the triangle formula is 1/2 base times height. What is the base of our triangle, Lucas? 6. Okay. So Maddox, I'm using this as 1 full triangle. Its height is 2. So 1/2 times 6 times 2. What's half of 6? And what's 3 times 2? Or if that doesn't make any sense to you, like, how did I get 6? What's half of 2? So we're just timesing 6 by 1, actually. So we're going to get 6 here because the triangle formula has us using the half. So the area of the triangle is 6 square meters. Now for the trapezoid, and by the way, if you want to split this into a rectangle and a triangle, you still get the right answer, assuming you do all that work correctly. For the trapezoid formula is 1/2, instead of base times height, it's 1/2 bases times the height. B1 plus B2, I just say bases because you're just adding them together. Now, our bases of the trapezoid are our 2 parallel segments. We already know, Lucas said this one here is 6. What about this one down here on bottom? How long is that? 9. So 1/2 bases times height. What's 6 plus 9? 15. And then the height of the trapezoid, this dotted line is the height, and that dotted line is going to be the same as that one, which is 3. That's going to give me all of this space, all of it. So I don't know what well, you might know half of 15. It's not a whole number, it's a decimal. So if you don't want to do that, you could just do 15 times 3 first and then divide by 2. What's this area of the trapezoid? Whitney? You can use your calculator. 15 times 3 divided by 2. 22.5, okay. And then add them together. Can I get a volunteer for that one? Frank, I haven't heard from you in a while. 28.5, go ahead and label it for me, Frank. 28.5 meters squared. If you did split it in, did I just see someone run by?
Yeah.
Who was that? Yeah, go ahead. Thank you. If you did split this into a rectangle, you would have done 3 times 6. What's 3 times 6? 18. And then you would have done 1/2 of base times height. 3 times 3 is 9, and half of 9 is 4.5. And if you add, I don't know if you can see that very well. If you add 18 and 4.5 together, you get 22.5, which is what we got when we did the whole thing. So it just saves you a little bit of time if you just use it as a trapezoid instead of 2 different shapes. Yes, Parker. The last one, number 6. Yeah. Okay, number 8. Number 8 says the tires of a tractor are 4.5 feet tall. How many 360-degree rotations do the tires make when the tractor travels 170 feet? Round your answer to the nearest whole number. Okay, so they're 4.5 feet tall. They're making 360-degree rotations. And it wants to know how many rotations it would take for the tractor to travel 170 feet. This doesn't sound like an area problem. Yeah, if you're talking about the rotations of a tire, that sounds like circumference, doesn't it? Distance around. Okay, so let's find the circumference of these tires. So here's a, you don't need a picture. I'm going to give you one anyways. It says the height is 4.5. So is that the radius or the diameter of the circle? Diameter, and circumference formula uses the diameter. So that's what we want. So we're just going to do pi times 4.5. And Alexis is going to tell us what that is. 3.14 times 4.5. Awesome, 14.13, all right. Now, what that means is, and that's feet, because remember circumference is just regular units. Yes. So you got 14.14 then? Okay, you can use that. So what that means is when this tire spins around one time, since the distance around the tire is 14.13, it's going to have traveled 14.13 feet. And I want to know how many of those rotations, how many 14.13s it's going to take before the tractor travels 170 feet. So I need to know how many 14.13s go into 170. What type of problem is this then? It's a division problem. I'm going to take 170 and I'm going to divide it by the distance that I travel with one spin of the tire. That's going to tell me how many spins I'd have to make. Lucas? 12, is it? It can't be perfectly 12, is it? 12.031 something. Okay, but it does say round to nearest whole number. So you saw 12.03 and you knew that was closer to 12 than it was to 13, obviously. So we're going to go with our final answer of 12 rotations. Our answer is not in feet or feet squared, but it wants to know how many rotations of the tire it's going to make. So 12 spins and that tractor is going to have traveled 170 feet. That's number 8, by the way. Number 9. How are we doing? Am I going too fast? Is everyone caught up with where we are? Okay. Number 9. Find the area of the semicircular desk, which is just this portion here. Semicircle. Take the area formula of a circle and do what to it? Divided by 2, or times it by half. You made my mistake earlier. Don't say divide by half. Yeah, so take pi r squared and then times it by half or divide by 2. However you want to write it. I don't care how you write it, as long as it says either divide by 2 or times by a half. By the way, not that you really need to know this, but it's kind of why this works out. When you times by a half, the 1 that's on top of the fraction, because this is really, couldn't I say that this is whoop, can't break the pi apart. Couldn't I say that pi r squared is the same as pi r squared divided by 1? That's why you're able to turn any whole number into a fraction by putting 1 on bottom, so it doesn't change it. Well, when I used my multiplication, 1 times pi r squared on top times top, numerator times numerator is pi r squared. And 2 times 1 on bottom, timesing by half and putting divide by 2 is the same thing. So I don't care how you write it, as long as you write it as one of those 2 ways. I like writing it like this because I see half and I see half a circle. Makes sense. What is the radius of our half a circle? It's 3. The diameter from one side to the other side is 6, and I want just the half portion from the center, right? So that's the radius. And so our radius is going to be 3. So we're going to do 1/2 times pi times 3 squared. What's 3 squared? What's half of 9? What's half of 9? 4. Didn't we just do 4.5 times pi right here? So I would expect to get the same answer. Again, let me double check this. 3 squared is 9, not 6. So I'm not timesing by 2, I'm timesing by another 3. Divide by 2 is 4.5. This should give us 14.13. And that this time is going to be our final answer, except label. Feet squared. It's area again, so feet squared. And that was number 9. Now, when I give you your formulas on tomorrow's quiz, I'm not going to give you the semicircle formula. I'll give you the area formula. Can you remember that a semicircle is half a circle? And that you just need to put half of the area formula, put a half in front of it? Okay. Number 10, a coaster is designed to hold 2 different drinks. Find the area of the coaster rounded to the nearest hundredth. That's 2 decimal places. So again, I'm not doing sides. It's not perimeter. I'm doing area. What shapes do you see? Anna? Nice. 2 semicircles and a rectangle. Wait a second. Do you see 2 full circles? I do too. Here's why we can't use these 2 full circles. Because if we find the area of both of them, and we could very easily do that, look what's left. Do you know how to find the area of whatever this is? I don't either. Well, I guess I could think of it as 1 full rectangle and then subtract out that part and that part. And then I'm thinking, why did I even find the area of that part to begin with? So instead of making this problem difficult, let's think of it as 1 rectangle, kind of like the basketball court problem we did the other day, where we had we saw the circle, but we thought, no, we're gonna include parts of the circles in that rectangle. By the way, what's 5 times 3? 15. Okay, so I know that's easy to do in your head. Write it down anyway, so we can remember where that 15 came from. 5 times 3 is the area of that rectangle. And then what's left is a semicircle on this side and a semicircle on this side. And what's 2 semicircles make? A full circle. So I'm going to add that with a full circle. And I need to know what the radius of that full circle is. So remember, please, that 3 went from the top to the bottom. 3 is the diameter. What is it? 1.5. It's half of 3. That's right. So our radius is going to be 1.5. And that's the number we're going to square. And remember, we have to square the radius before we times by pi. Now, 1.5 squared, 2.25, 2.25. Then we're going to times that by 3.14. And I get 7.065. Again, I'm using 3.14, not the pi button. If you use the pi button, you get something slightly bigger, probably rounds to 7.07, which is actually what this is going to round to. I don't typically round at the beginning of a problem. I like to round at the end because that keeps my accuracy as long as possible. But since I know this is asking me to round to the nearest hundredth, and the 15 doesn't have any decimal places anyways, we might as well just go ahead and say this is 7.07. And the reason I'm saying 7.07 is because the 5 is enough to bump that 6 up. So now it's rounded to the nearest hundredth. Now I add 15 onto the 7. Aiden, what's 15 plus 7.07? All right, and how do I label area problems? Inches squared. All right. Any of these you need me to go back to? Okay, before you submit, please make sure you have your name on the submit. We're going to pass it forward. Make sure you have your name on it. Make sure all of your answers are labeled, and do you have work shown for everything? If that's true, true, and true, pass it forward.